This video is documenting the prediction that the U.S. will begin an operation to extract the nuclear dust from Iran on specifically May 9th, 2026. The date that this video was posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. All right, welcome. This video is predicting that President Trump will begin the operation to extract nuclear dust from Iran on May 9th, 2026. Today's date, but as you can see here, this email was composed on April 20th. All right, April 20th. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I'll forward this to you. But as we can clearly see, also the post date of this video proves this too. The day I'm recording this is April 24th. But again, this information that I'm about to present was known since at least April 20th. It was known actually a few days before that even. As of today, April 24th, there is zero news about any sort of operation. So I imagine you will be listening to this video in the future, and you will need what I am giving you right now, which is a refresher of the timeline of the events leading up to what is predicted, which is that this operation will be conducted to attempt to extract the nuclear dust from Iran, which is predicted to begin on May 9th, okay? But the point I am making right now is that as of this moment, April 24th, and as of the moment of the composition of this email, there is a ceasefire, okay? If you are watching this a month from now or something, remember that there was this 2-week ceasefire that Trump and Iran agreed to regarding the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran pledging that it would be open again during this ceasefire. And during that ceasefire, Trump closed it to the Iranian ships from Iranian ports. Okay, and then the ceasefire was extended indefinitely in the hopes that there would be some more talks. But April 20th, when this was composed, was prior to the end of the 2 weeks, which was April 22nd. And it was on April 22nd that Trump said that he would postpone the deadline indefinitely in the hopes of restarting the peace talks. Okay? So what I am predicting, in other words, is that the peace talks will fail and Trump will be compelled to go in and get the nuclear dust himself. Okay? That's what's coming, and the world does not know this at this time. There are, of course, some people that know about what's going on know that this is a possibility, that the peace talks could fail and Trump could go into or want to go in and get the dust himself. In fact, there was a 60 Minutes segment on this just the other day. But no one is actually understanding that it's actually going to happen, let alone on the specific date of May 9th. Okay? And that, for anyone with a modicum of wisdom, will prove the point of this prediction, which is from God. It will prove that this prediction is from God, but specifically the righteous Christian God of the Bible, not any other God. There is no New Ager interpretation of what I am giving you. I know far better than you or anyone the reason and purpose for this prediction and how I know this prediction. And I know the purpose of this prediction. And it is to prove the righteous Christian God of the Bible And also, importantly, because there's already an overwhelming amount of evidence for the righteous Christian God of the Bible. But importantly, this prediction will prove all of the controversial things that I will be saying in this video and the other videos on this video channel. Make no mistake. I know more than you. I know far more than you. The reason and purpose for this prediction and how it all works. And it is only on this channel that God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is being explained. And I know how the big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. And I know its purpose. Okay. And so we will see what happens on May 9th. I know that God is pointing to May 9th, and I know he is pointing to it with this issue of the nuclear dust. It could be that something relevant happens on May 9th, perhaps a statement from Trump or something regarding the nuclear dust, and that May 9th isn't the date of the beginning of the operation. That's possible. There's no way to know, really, because that's how God's signs works, and I know how it works. After having spent more than full-time hours from morning until night for more than 8 years studying his big picture of signs. He'll point to a date, and it could be a step in the trail of signs leading to the ultimate prediction, which is that this operation will at some point begin, and God is pointing to May 9th regarding this operation. So it could begin on May 9th, or if not, there will be something relevant to this issue that will occur on May 9th. And if that's the case, more than likely, it will require an explanation in another video because the average person will not be able to recognize what is going on, because the average person, or anyone really, that doesn't know this channel will not be able to know what's going on once this, whatever happens on May 9th happens. So check back in. Hopefully I have time to go back and explain. At some point, I'm sure, though, it is likely that what happened or what will happen on May 9th will be explained in a video. If, of course, this isn't the date that the operation will begin, which I think is most likely. Now, I'm just going to read to you something I wrote to explain how I know this prediction. And I want to make something clear here. It is the reasons for how I know. That proves that this is from God. The hardcore agnostic atheist in the fundamentalist religion of agnostic atheism, because it is a fundamentalist religion that requires all sorts of irrational thinking. But anyway, that person absolutely does not want to admit anything as far as evidence for a God, because their religion has a core belief, like every religion does, and every worldview is a religion. Their religion and the core belief of their worldview is that there may or may not be a God, but it is impossible to know because there is no evidence, which is the biggest lie of all of history and absurd, but also that's their core belief. And so there's something in psychology called belief perseverance, which is that when someone is confronted with information that contradicts their worldview, they block it out. Why? Because changing a person's worldview is tantamount to changing the person. We are what we believe. And we are our worldview, which is why it's extremely uncomfortable to change one's worldview, which is why it requires an extreme amount of humility to change one's worldview into the righteous Christian God of the Bible worldview. And it just so happens that that is the meaning of life, according to the Christian worldview, which is that it is a test of humility. So it's perfectly designed. And so the agnostic atheist will continue to say, well, it was possible that the big operation to extract the nuclear dust was going to happen, and it was also possible that it could happen on any date in the next 2 to 3 months. And so you, by picking May 9th, either got lucky or you have made a video for every other date, and one of those dates is bound to be the right date, and blah, blah, blah. Well, sorry to say, but the reasons that I'll be explaining in this video will be clear and profound and obvious that no human being is creative enough to come up with these explanations. To concoct these explanations is impossible for a human being to do, as you will see. And so let's get into the explanations that will prove that this is from God. And to conclude otherwise, after you've heard the explanations, go ahead and be a silly person to think that I would have been crazy enough to make a video for every date, which makes you the crazy person for thinking that I would do such a thing. Literally, you are literally, cuckoo for thinking that. But, God did not design human beings to be irrational, but it would be completely irrational to conclude that. But after you've heard the explanation and the reasons for how I know this in advance, to make any other conclusion other than this being from the righteous Christian God of the Bible makes you a complete, utter fool. And so let's begin. This email is documenting the prediction that President Trump will begin the operation to extract the nuclear dust from Iran on May 9th, 2026. The number 9 symbolizes God's judgment. From the Bible, it is the most important number in God's signs also because of this. The 9th day of the month of May in 2026 will be exactly 9 years after 9,000 workers evacuated. And by the way, God repeats the number 3 times also for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. Here we have a repetition of the number 9 3 times here. So again, the 9th of May in 2026 will be exactly 9 years after 9,000 workers evacuated the Hanford nuclear site in Washington state, after the discovery the tunnel walls had collapsed on rail cars containing radioactive waste left over from the production of nuclear bombs. The nuclear bombs, for example, that were dropped on Japan. It's a historic site as well. Anyway, the nuclear material in tunnels deep underground at the Hanford nuclear site hints at the highly enriched uranium that is in tunnels deep underground in Isfahan, Iran. In turn, 9,000 workers evacuated the Hanford nuclear site exactly 9 years after Barack Obama, who was inaugurated in the year 2009, made his famous 57 instead of 50 states gaffe on the campaign trail on May 9th, 2008. The gaffe was a prophetic sign that hinted at the 57 states, nations, that comprise the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. The 44th president grew up for 4 years in one of the nations. And I believe he was at the age of 4 at that time. I could be wrong. The gaffe was also ironic. His 57 instead of 50 states gaffe that he made on the campaign trail, saying that he had visited all 57 states. The gaffe was also ironic given that he also grew up in the 50th state, speaking of where he grew up for 4 years. for the 44th president in Indonesia, one of the nations that are in the 57 states of Islamic cooperation. Iran is one of the 57 Islamic states. By the way, before we continue, I forgot to add, not necessarily in the text, but I forgot to just say that it is predicted that the mission, the operation to extract the nuclear dust, will be aborted. I'll repeat that. It will be aborted. It'll fail. Why will it fail? I believe it is because God is pointing to how a U.S. warship will be sunk in the Persian Gulf. Specifically, the USS Abraham Lincoln on May 23rd. Speaking of the number 9s we've already mentioned, the 23rd is the number 23 is the 9th prime number. And Obama, who was inaugurated in 2009, wore number 23 when he played high school basketball, the basketball president. And this is actually all a parallel with Operation Eagle Claw, which was an attempt to extract, let's see, do I write about that in these coming paragraphs? No. So this is a parallel with the Operation Eagle Claw, which was an attempt to extract from Iran the hostages in the 444-day hostage crisis. That's actually one of the names of the hostage crisis, the 444-day hostage crisis, which coincided with the final 444 days of Carter's presidency and the first day of the 40th president's presidency. In the operation, 4+4 helicopters were sent into Iran. Only 4 of them returned. One of them, at the rendezvous, collided with a refueling plane, which is why recently on March 12th, the refueling plane collided with another plane. Anyway, that's another parallel. The collision killed 4+4 military personnel and injured 4 others in Operation Eagle Claw. And this was during the attempt to rescue the 4 times 4th prime number of hostages in the 444-day Iran hostage crisis. Where the planes collided and the 4+4 died and the 4 were injured in the desert of Iran, at the time, an Iranian bus drove by with civilians, which had to be held captive for a little bit. There were 44 people on board that bus. We have a pattern here, obviously. The site outside of Tehran that was selected for the rendezvous in the desert was selected because of its moon-like landscape. But when they arrived, they were surprised to discover that ankle-deep level of dust had settled on the site. When the helicopters landed, there was zero visibility, which hinted at the zero visibility from the moon dust. When Apollo 11 landed and it was said, the Eagle has landed, as in Operation Eagle Claw landing in the zero visibility dust, which is a parallel with the moon dust, but also, and the Eagle has landed, but also a parallel, Operation Eagle Claw and the dust is a parallel with the coming operation in Iran for the nuclear dust. When the requisite number of helicopters didn't make it, the president ordered the mission to be aborted, just like how Trump is predicted to abort the mission to extract the nuclear dust after a disaster, which is predicted to be the sinking of the aircraft carrier named after the 4x4th president, as in the disaster in Operation Eagle Claw that killed 4+4 people, military personnel. And so I just thought I'd add that. That's more information for you regarding what is going on with this prediction for the extraction of the nuclear dust. In confirming his signs, God pairs the numbers 9 and 110 together. Before the walls of security collapsed due to an earthquake on the ancient city of Jericho, on the Feast of Pentecost, the Israelites blew trumpets, as described in the Bible. The Israelites were led by Joshua, who died at the age of 110. After the 110-story towers collapsed on 9/11, Trumpet called into the local Channel 9 news station and inadvertently trumpeted that his tower on Wall Street, that was named after a 9-foot-high wall of security, had become the tallest tower in Lower Manhattan. 110 weeks after 9,000 workers, a pairing of 9 and 110, were evacuated after tunnel walls collapsed on rail cars with nuclear waste at the Hanford nuclear site. There was a 3.2 magnitude earthquake at Jericho, Washington State, on Pentecost. All right? So from the evacuation to the earthquake at the same location, essentially, it is exactly 110 weeks. We have an earthquake, and Joshua led the Israelites before the walls of security collapsed on Jericho due to an earthquake on Pentecost, and this earthquake occurred on Pentecost in Jericho, Washington State, this rare earthquake. Jericho, Washington is just a few miles downstream on the Columbia River from the Hanford nuclear site. These two events happened 110 weeks apart, exactly. On this same day, Pentecost, was an official dedication ceremony to the new Trump Heights settlement in the Golan Heights, in which the leader of Israel, symbolic of Joshua in the Bible, was in attendance, as was the U.S. ambassador. Okay, now this earthquake was 3.2 in magnitude, and this hinted at the word bomb, which is equal to 32 in simple English gematria. The word Bama means, in Hebrew, high place, as in heights. And the name Obama is also equal to 32 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. And Obama hints at Obama. In Bible prophecy, a period of 2,520 days symbolizes the period of the end times and the Antichrist in the most central prophecy in the Bible. 2,520 days, the end times. The rare 3.2 earthquake at Jericho on Pentecost, when the walls of security collapsed in the Bible, on June 16th, 2019, is exactly 2,520 days before it is predicted that Trump will begin the mission to extract the nuclear dust from Iran on May 9th, 2026, before the Iranian regime is able to make nuclear bombs with it. Hence the 3.2 and the bomb. And so now we have two profound connections that, as I said at the beginning, could only have come from the mind of God Okay, we have the connection with the 9 years exactly to May 9th from the tunnel walls collapsing on the rail cars with nuclear dust in the tunnels deep underground, all right? As in the nuclear dust that's deep underground in Iran, in the tunnels, okay? So you have the 9 years connection, but we also have 110 weeks from that evacuation to this rare earthquake, which is all relevant because Joshua was with the Israelites when the walls collapsed due to an earthquake, and he died at 110. And from this earthquake, at the same location as the Hanford nuclear site, it is 2,520 days exactly to May 9th. Two most profound connections from the tunnel walls on the nuclear dust underneath the historic U.S. National Parks site where the first bombs were made, the material for it. Okay, you get my point. This is a huge thing. Hanford nuclear site is also symbolic of bombs being dropped in a war. It's the place in the world for nuclear material. And we've got these two profound connections to what is being predicted as being the beginning of the extraction of the nuclear dust. On the 9th of the month, we have even the Channel 9 News and the 9-foot-high wall of security that Wall Street is named after. The Dutch built it to keep the British and the Indians out. Okay, now, one last thing here. After the Israelites blew trumpets on Pentecost, they shouted, and then the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment. On this same Pentecost in 2019, 500,000 St. Louis Blues fans shouted at the Gateway Arch to celebrate their Stanley Cup victory. In the Bible, judgment begins on a people or a nation at the gate, which is why God is using this Gateway Arch here. But this was on Pentecost, and they shouted. Not only did they shout it, there's actually a lot more backstory to this sign that I'm not getting into in this video because it could just go on for another hour. But they shouted throughout their prophetic season, the Blues, to the song Gloria. The team started this tradition in the first playoff series where after every victory, they would continuously play the song Gloria by Laura Branigan in the locker room. And then when they won their first series, the local radio station played Gloria 24 hours nonstop. And that's just the beginning of that story. But Gloria is biblical. It's God worship. And so that's part of this, what I'm getting at. And that's what they were shouting throughout the prophetic playoff season there. And of course, but they began that tradition actually way back in January that year. And that's another prophetic story, which I won't start to get into. Because I've explained it a number of times in other videos. And when this prediction comes to pass, the wise person will recognize that they need to watch every video on this channel. I don't know where you're going to find the time though, but all of this information regarding the 2019 St. Louis Blues is out there. All right, now the thing is, the NHL was formed in November of 1917. The beginning of modern Israel's history dates back to the Balfour Declaration authored in November 1917. The Balfour Declaration was that Jews be allowed to emigrate to Palestine. All right, in other words, this was the symbolic beginning of the modern state of Israel in November of 1917, and November of 1917 was the symbolic beginning of the NHL. The NHL began with 6 teams, and then in 1967, it expanded with 6 more teams. In 1967, Israel also expanded its territory, because that's what an NHL expansion is it's an expansion of territory with new cities, land. Israel also in 1967 expanded its territory as a result of the Six-Day War. Okay, so the NHL began with six teams, and then in 67 they expanded with 6 more teams, and in 67 Israel expanded its territory in the Six-Day War. That's a capital D there. That's the name of the war. In 2019, the St. Louis Blues were the last of the 6 expansion teams from 67 to win the Stanley Cup. They finally won it. The nickname of the Blues is Blue and Whites. The nickname for things Israeli is blue and white. The dedication ceremony at Trump Heights in the Golan Heights on this Pentecost in 2019, when the Blues fans were shouting, was a symbolic expansion of Israel's territory. That's what it was. They had taken the Golan Heights and they named it after Trump Heights because Trump was the first president to vote no on the UN resolution to condemn Israel's occupation of the Golan Heights. It is predicted that Trump's mission to extract the nuclear dust will fail, and that Israel will be compelled to nuke bomb the Iranian regime. They will have no other choice, because the only way to understand this conflict properly is from a spiritual perspective. It is impossible to understand what is going on and this conflict without a biblical spiritual perspective. It's impossible. You do not understand it if you do not have this perspective. The truth is, in the Bible, for example, one of the names of Satan is the Prince of Persia. The Iranian regime is satanic. It is pure evil, and its goal is to eliminate Israel. And it will not stop. It's satanic. There is no negotiating with Satan. It's impossible. They will always lie and cheat and always work towards getting the nuclear bomb to destroy Israel. Satan is trying to restore Israel because God is trying to Satan is trying to destroy Israel because God is trying to restore Israel, which will lead to the second coming of Christ. And his 1,000 years of peace on earth, when he will dwell on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And of course, Satan's agenda is the anti-plan. It's the exact plan to prevent the plan. God uses Satan for his purposes. And so, Israel will be compelled to nuke the Iranian regime, because they must not get, it's either them or Israel. Right? It's either the Iranian regime gets destroyed or Israel does. And Israel will self-preserve itself, as they should. Which gets us into another subject of what is the meaning of life and what is the value of a death. There is no meaning to life. Zero. None. Period. There's no meaning to life. Any atheist that thinks that there is completely delusional, and they must come up with a delusion to get themselves out of bed every day. The irony is that they think the people that believe in a God are the delusional ones, but they are the complete fools and delusional ones. I mean, the evidence for the Creator is all around them. You don't need the painter to stand beside the painting to know that a painter painted it. Just for example. Anyway, there's zero meaning without eternity, because, of course, that every person is going to die. To claim, well, your memory will live on in the success of generations is also a lie, as if that would bring meaning to that person's life. It doesn't. But those people will also die. Eventually, even, the sun will be too hot for life to exist on Earth, and that's not very far from now in terms of cosmological time, 900,000 years. There's no meaning to it all. Anything. Zero. Unless there's eternity. All right? And God has a plan. I mean, everyone is going to die, and there's no meaning to anyone's life unless there's an eternity. Does not matter. You could create all the great memories you want, but you can't take them with you when you die if there's no afterlife, if there's no eternity. You know, like, it's so clear and obvious, but it's so obvious that people don't even want to look at it. Because it's despairing in their worldview, because they refuse to accept the reality of a God. And there's reasons for that too, right? There's spiritual reasons why they refuse to accept it. For them, it is icky for them to the notion of waking up in the morning and praying to a God. They do not like that idea. It isn't them, so they'll say, you know, it's not them. It's icky for them. The truth is they do not want there to be a God, and they refuse to look at any evidence at all. Belief perseverance has it go in one ear and out the other. I don't know how this prediction is going to go in one ear and out the other. Probably you've turned off this video by now. But hopefully you know a Christian who's been shoving this video down your throat. Incidentally, if you are a Christian, that is your obligation. You must use the bags of gold, and there's nothing compared to this in terms of a bag of gold and evangelism, such as this prediction. 1/3 of the Bible is prophecy for the purpose of God proving it. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, Revelation 19:10. This prediction is the spirit of prophecy. There's nothing like this. You must not ever stop sharing this video. Everywhere you go. You even need, in my opinion, to start handing out flyers with them leading to the channel on the busy street corners or car windshields and parking lots. And if you want the flyer I hand out, please contact me. But you also need to leave the link to this video with different descriptions every time, because you don't want to, get the algorithms to think that you're copy pasting it everywhere 1,000 times, because then they'll just shut your channel down. So you need to say something a little bit, change up the wording a little bit each time. You could even say some nonsense. I don't know what you're going to say, but just make sure you get the video, and don't only link it into preaching to the choir. Go to video channels that are of the enemy, where they'll never hear this sort of thing. Okay, and on that note, I'll just read this last sentence here. This is merely scratching the surface of the reasons for how this prediction is known in advance. For more information, please visit Odyssey.com or Rumble.com video channels spelled Asteroid Prediction. I might change this to Spirit of Prophecy. I'm thinking of changing the name to either from Asteroid Prediction to Spirit of Prophecy. But also read the website TrumpPrediction.com. In the Bible, the number 13 symbolizes Iran, or vice versa. Iran is symbolized by the number 13, as in the book of Esther, the Jews in ancient Persia were persecuted on the 13th days of the month. Also, Iran is equal to 130 in Hebrew gematria. On May 26th, Trump said in an interview with Fox News that the U.S. will take Iran's nuclear dust. This was on the day that he also canceled the delegation for talks with Iran in Pakistan regarding the nuclear dust. This statement regarding taking Iran's nuclear dust was made 13 days before it is predicted that the operation to take the nuclear dust will commence. As we can see here, this email was composed on April 26th. This is the day that Trump made this statement about taking the nuclear dust. And so this is more confirmation for the fact that God is pointing to May 9th. It remains to be seen what will happen on May 9th if it isn't the commencement of this operation to take the nuclear dust. Something relevant will occur on this date, something relevant to taking the nuclear dust. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.